All right, well, we will go ahead and get started. Everyone's still standing, so please remain standing and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where our fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountain side, let freedom ring.
Let us pray. Almighty God, you have taught us that the meaning of life is to be found in putting service above self. We ask you to bless all who give themselves to the service of their fellow men and women. Endue them with wisdom, patience, and courage, to strengthen the weak and to raise up those who fall, that being inspired by love, they may minister to the suffering, the friendless, and the needy. In your name we pray. Amen.
All right, now we will enjoy our lunch. They will serve us at our tables, and I requested a special chocolate dessert today in honor of Valentine's Day, and I've been told that we are going to have a yummy chocolate dessert. So please enjoy your meal, and we will return to our program in about 20 minutes. Thank you. First, we will start with visiting Rotarians and guests. I am happy today to announce that Cindy Capps is with us, our friend from Sequest, and she submitted her application to join the club. So, welcome, Cindy. And then we have a ton of people here from the city of Lynchburg. Some of them are speaking, some of them are not, but I'm going to ask them to stand up and just say briefly who they are and their position with the city. So we'll start back with Anna.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having us. My name is Greg Patrick. I'm the Deputy City Manager.
And I'm Donna Litt. I'm the Chief Financial Officer. I'm Randy Perception, City Planner.
All right, thank y'all for being here. And then we have the tech team that's currently running things. So welcome, tech team. Thank you for being here. Thank you very much. So this will be recorded for the city to use so they can educate more people about the city budget. All right, on to brief Rotary announcements. Beyond our Valentine's cards, we are doing birthday boxes for Meals on Wheels this month. So, birthday boxes look like this. They are a shoebox that has been wrapped in birthday paper. If you are not crafty, like me, do not worry. You can just bring a shoebox with stuff in it, and Meals on Wheels will take care of wrapping it for you. These birthday boxes are delivered to Meals on Wheels recipients on their birthdays, and as an example, they have a little card, a little stuffed animal, some toiletries, etc. In the e-blast I sent yesterday, there is a list of everything you could include, but it's household items, nothing too expensive, just something to show they care. A lot of people, this is all they receive on their birthday. It really means a lot to them. So what we are doing is collecting birthday boxes this month, and Chris, our member, is Executive Director on Meals of Wheels of Lynchburg. She will collect them and they will be distributed. If you just want to bring in items, if you don't want to fool with the box, you can bring in a bag of items and they will take care of putting it in the birthday boxes for you. So we've already had some members bring in items today. We have one more meeting this month on February 27th, so please bring in items, boxes, whatever you feel you would like to give to a Meals on Wheels recipient, and Chris will take care of making sure it gets in the right hands. So that is our community service project for February. All right, now I have a very special announcement that I just found out about yesterday. I don't know if y'all remember last fall, Charlotte with the district came and spoke to us about the Rotary Youth Exchange Program. And 2 of our members volunteered at that time to host an international exchange student. But we had to get everything approved through Lynchburg City Schools. I'm happy to announce that Gus has taken care of that, and I am holding in my hands the MOU with Lynchburg City Schools. So we can have an international exchange student next year. So we are going to get that process started, get it in the budget. Charlotte and district will take care of identifying the international student that will be a part of our family for Rotary year 2024-2025. We do still need 1 more host family. They can be a Rotarian or a non-Rotarian. They do need to reside in the city of Lynchburg for them to attend for the student to attend Lynchburg City Schools. So we'll be talking about all that some more. We have some time. This student would not be joining us until August of 2024, but for now, let's give a big round of applause to Gus for handling the red tape, getting the MOU. All right. And next announcement, district conference is upon us. It will be held March 14th through 17th at the Inn of Virginia Tech in Blacksburg. Registration is open. I have already registered. I also registered for the Scotch tasting. So it's not all just workshops, it's fun. They're going to have a Scotch tasting, they're going to have a wine tasting. The event Saturday night is Scottish themed with a kilt contest I have signed my husband up for. So you should come. It's a lot of fun. It's a great way, beyond everything we do good locally, going to district conference, the level of speakers they bring in, it really does inspire you and shows you why we give back as Rotarians. So there are day rates if you just want to come up for the day. So you should, as Rotarians, you should have been getting emails from the district saying, time to register, registration's coming. Click on that link. And please join us. Paul and I will be there. Gus will be there. Cheryl will be there. And we can have a good time in Blacksburg for Rotary District Conference. Okay, now I am going to do Happy Bucks. Happy Bucks are those that we are happy about, things we want to share, etc. So does anyone have any Happy Bucks to share with us today? We had a Super Bowl win. Somebody happy Kansas won? On a non-happy note, just as an FYI, Dan Grabeel, our member, I was informed that his son passed away last week. So if you know Dan, want to reach out to him, give him your condolences, please feel free to do that. Okay, now we're going to proceed with our program, and I'm going to invite Edwin up here to introduce our program today.
Well, we're glad to have folks from the city today as our speakers. Our speakers are Greg Patrick and Donna Witt. Greg is the Deputy City Manager for the City of Lynchburg. Previously, he served as Director of Budget and Strategic Planning for the City of Norfolk. You notice that I can say Norfolk, just by the way. Greg graduated from Virginia Tech with a bachelor's degree in resource management and has a master's degree in accounting. In addition to his previous position, he also served as budget team leader and management analyst 3 with the City of Norfolk. During his time in Norfolk, Greg helped guide the city to its first ever AAA rating, developed a formula to guide local K through 12 operating funding, and a capital funding model for the school construction, and created Civic Lab, which supports data-informed and innovative management in city operations and increased transparency in the community. Donna is the city's chief financial officer and has served in this role since 2006. Ms. Witt has worked for the city of Lynchburg since 1999, first as Billings and Collections Administrator and then as Assistant Director of Finance Services. As Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Witt is responsible for directing overall financial planning and policy for identifying, monitoring, and analyzing the fiscal condition of the city. Further responsibilities include managing all aspects of the city's bonded indebtedness, including assessing debt capacity, coordinating bond issues and bond rating activities, and management oversight of the accounting, procurement, budget, and billings and collections, including utility billing divisions. Prior to her service with the city, Ms. Witt was Liberty University's Director of Accounting from I should not read these years, should I? Would you like me to update them? 2009, no, 1989 to 1999, and Director of Budget from 1997 to 1999. We are happy to have them with us today and glad that they are willing to come and share their time and let us know what's going on in this wonderful city in which we live. Would you welcome them?
Okay, I'll try to stand here. I'll try to be good. Stand here. But just to let you know, my sister is a missionary in Uganda, and she is part of the Rotary Club there in Jinja, Uganda. So she is part of your international group. So make sure I tell you that. So the reason we did this is we found out there was a lot of interest in what we do and the budget, but not only once it goes to city council, but how it's kind of formulated. So that's my part of this, is just to kind of walk you through how we do and why we do what we do. So, and please interrupt me at any time. If you've got questions, I'm happy to answer them. So, why and how? How many of you know that the Commonwealth of Virginia is a Dillon rule state? Thanks, Greg. So being a Dillon rule state, there was a Judge Dillon back in the day, and the Code of Virginia follows the Dillon rule, meaning that if the General Assembly doesn't give you permission to do it, you don't get to do it. So everything we do is based on a state code. So we are allowed to collect taxes, but only the taxes they allow, only with the due dates they allow, in the time period they allow. So it's very specific, the code that we follow. So we really don't get to make up what we do. So we can't, tax houses with red doors more than green doors. We can't say, oh, well, you have a golf cart, and so now you've got to pay triple for your golf cart because we think you should. So we don't get to do things like that. It all goes by state code. And most of it is in Title 15.2. So the city manager's proposed budget has to go to city council no later than April 1st. So that's even dictated by state code is when it goes. Now, generally in Lynchburg, our proposed budget, the manager's proposed budget, goes to city council at the first council meeting in March. So ours will become a public document, I believe it's March 12th. Excuse me. And the Code of Virginia also requires that the budget must be balanced. So the city manager cannot give a budget to city council that has a gap, that they've got to find the money to fill. He has to provide a balanced budget. And funds must be appropriated when spent. So every dollar that is spent by the city of Lynchburg is appropriated by city council, meaning we have their permission to spend it how they tell us. So we're not out there going rogue with taxpayer dollars. It has to all be appropriated through city council for a specific purpose. And all of this is dictated in state code in 15.2. So budget basics. We have a general fund, and that's probably what you all are more familiar with thinking about services. So your police department, fire department, finance department, human resources, city manager, public works, parks and rec, all those are funded through your tax dollars in the general fund. An enterprise fund, we have 4, is airport, water, sewer, and stormwater. And those run more like a true business where they have to collect fees that pays for their services. So that's why you have a utility bill. That's why when you go to the airport, you have to pay to park, the rental car services and all that federal money, but it has to pay for itself. And that's why those are set aside in special funds called enterprise funds. And then we have the operating budget versus the capital improvement program. So the operating budget is our day-to-day operations, what it takes to run the city. And then our capital budget is for all of our assets. So if we need to do maintenance, build a new building, all of our transportation projects, all of those run through what we call the capital fund. And we're going to go back to that in just a minute. Our fiscal year is July to June. And then schools funding. There's a lot of talk about schools funding. A large piece of that is local funding, but they also get funding from the state and the feds. And there's a really difficult calculation that's a required local effort, which tells us exactly how much we have to give schools. But almost every locality in Virginia, there may be a couple that don't do more than the required local effort. We about double how much we have to give schools by that composite index. So all of that's rolled into some really difficult calculations, but we do fund schools about twice what the state requires. Revenue projections. So when we start to compile our budget, the first thing we do is sit down and say how much money's coming in. So for the most part, we can look at what's going on in the city. So our business is booming. What's our sales tax look like? Our meals tax, that means things are really healthy in the economy if those things are growing. So we sit down with those. We sit down with the Commissioner of Revenue because a lot of those type of revenues flow through his office. So we work with him. We work with our city assessor for what real estate looks like. And a lot of people think that I call our city assessor and say, here's how much money I need. You need to bump up those assessments. It really doesn't work that way. We are not in cahoots. So just so you know, let me put that out there. We also look at historic trends. Now, the one thing that really made life difficult was called COVID. And we had no clue what our revenues were going to look like during COVID. There was nothing to compare it to. So while we were putting budgets together, businesses were closed, restaurants were closed. I mean, people started trying to figure out different ways to do life, and we really had no clue. So if you hear that, the city had a surplus and whatnot, it's because we didn't know what our revenues were going to be. It wasn't really a surplus, it was just we didn't know what it was going to look like. So thankfully, restaurants figured out takeout. Some retail was able to open. So, but that really makes life difficult when you're in the budget office, when you really have to say, I don't have a clue. So expenditure considerations, we have to look at whether there's inflation, if there's any new staffing needs. A lot of times we're trying to get more police on the streets, those type of things, so we need some staffing needs. Also, equipment and program needs. We have to look at what it takes to run the city. What kind of software needs do we have? The financial system, we had to upgrade it several years ago. It's not cheap. So we have to look at all those things and how they prioritize and how they fall into the budget. So once departments give us their submissions, we don't get to dictate, you just get to ask for this and you should ask for that. We get submissions from each of our departments. A lot of times we have to give them instructions of what we see based on those revenues. But then the city manager also looks at that based on priorities of city council. So when he knows things are important to city council, we need to make sure that we've incorporated that into his proposed budget. So once we have our revenues and once we have our expenditures, we put those needs together, and then generally we have a gap. One time in my 20-year tenure in budget, we actually had a surplus, but that's because we told departments, you've got to make these cuts because we don't think we're going to have enough money, and our revenues came in better than we expected, our projections, and we got to go shopping. So that was an anomaly. It like never happens. So, but when we close the gap, I mean, it's really not rocket science. You either have to bring in more money, raise your revenues, reduce your service levels or what you spend, look at new initiatives. A lot of times, we can't afford new initiatives, and so those automatically come off the table. Department equipment needs. Sometimes we just have to say no. Fleet replacements, might have to drive those vehicles one more year, please don't wreck them. And so sometimes we have to stretch it out a little bit. Ongoing maintenance. Sometimes we have to defer building maintenance because we don't have enough money. So those are things that we look at and what we cut, and again, based on priorities. So back to the capital plan. It is a 5-year plan. The council appropriates the first year for what we spend, and the rest of it is a plan. But that includes our buildings, transportation, parks and rec, economic development, our school facilities, and also the enterprise funds have their own capital improvement program. So when we fund these, a lot of times we use bonds. So we sell bonds in the marketplace. Again, state code has a whole lot of code on how we sell bonds and what we do. We also have some cash funding. Sometimes at the end of the year, if we have money left over, our revenues were more than our expenditures, and we go through another calculation, we can use some of that cash to help fund our capital projects, especially maintenance type projects, so we don't have to borrow for those. And then we get state and federal funds. Our largest one is the VDOT funds from the state. A lot of our transportation projects are done with revenue share, which is 50-50 money, which is really nice when you only have to come up for half the cost of a bridge instead of the whole cost of the bridge. And then we can get some other grants. There's some TAP grants that help with sidewalks or pedestrian ways on bridges, so we do get some other funding as well, but the biggest one for our state funding is VDOT. So how can your voice be heard? We've been really pleased to have citizens come and actually speak to City Council, because really we all work for you. And we want to make sure that we're providing excellent services, and we need to know what's important to you. And the next piece of this, Greg's going to play a game with you, so you get to pick your priorities. But one way to stay involved is to make sure you're watching city council meetings. Sign up to speak at city council meetings. You do those in advance of the meeting through the clerk of the court, clerk of council. And there's also on our website, you can go out there and speak. March and April, we have work sessions. So once the budget goes to the city council, we start having weekly meetings where they can rebalance what's important to them, and they'll rebalance those budget. All of those are televised. We have what we call budget and brews. So we go out in the community, and brews can be coffee, tea, whatever. Because we usually have one at First Baptist Church downtown. And I call that one budget and pews. So, and also we're mandated by state code to have a public hearing. So that's another way. You can just come. We have sign up right there at a table. You don't have to sign up in advance, and you can come and tell council what you think. So it's important. So our budget calendar, we start around December 1st. We did have a council retreat to let them know kind of here's what we see with the budget, get their input about what's important to them. January and February, those ladies back there are very, very busy putting the budget together, the proposed budget. We work very closely with the city manager and Greg to do that. But we also are doing these budget meetings. And then budget, March 12th, the budget presentation, that's the meeting that the city manager's budget becomes formally public. And then the budget and brew sessions, the dates are up there. There'll be more information on our website, so make sure you all come and participate in those. And the city manager will walk through his proposed budget. So he'll tell you exactly what's included in his proposed budget. And then the budget work sessions I mentioned, we do have a joint city council school board meeting in a work session on March 26th. April 16th is our public hearing. And then we generally adopt the budget in May. It takes 2 meetings to appropriate the funds, and those are generally done at the 2 May meetings. So if you don't know who your city council member is, here's a list and kind of where the wards are. You can always call us, we will help you. But, we do have ward members, and then we have at-large members. This November is an election for our ward members. And then I'm going to turn this over to Anna and Greg and let them do what we call budget madness. I don't know why I can't talk today. Thank you. I think I had too much cake. That's so good.
All right. So now we're going to play a little game with you, and Greg is going to be our Vanna White of sorts. Pat Sajak. Vanna's much cooler. So we developed a game that you can play on our website, but we're going to play as a group today. So Starlet is we'll take a minute for everybody to get the technology settled, and we'll pull that up. So Starlet is handing out a QR code. So if you've got one of these in your pocket, if you could scan the QR code, and you should see a screen that says, like, waiting for City of Lynchburg. It should be a black screen waiting for City of Lynchburg to activate. Cindy, are you seeing it? Okay, good. Yes. All right. So what we have done, I'm going to text message you on this. Yeah, Greg, do you mind explaining it?
So again, thanks for having us today. One of the things that we like to do during the budget process is try to find as many ways as possible to get information from our residents and stakeholders as to what's important in the budget from a services standpoint to them. So this is, what we're going to do is not at all scientific, and it wouldn't pass muster to be published in any sort of journal, but it does give us a little bit of feedback as to what priorities are. It's based around a March Madness style bracket challenge, right? So everyone, I imagine, is familiar with the NCAA tournament in March. There's 64 teams, and then you have a winner. Well, here we've got 16 major city programs, and we're going to ask you a question. We're going to have matchups, right? And we're going to ask you a simple question. If the city had additional funds to invest in one of these 2 programs, which one would you choose? You're going to then use your phone to vote. We're going to see the live tallies up here, and we're going to play that all the way out until we have a winner. We'll record your bracket and make sure that we send it to City Council that says, this is the Afternoon Rotary's budget bracket challenge bracket. So they'll get an understanding of all the public engagement we do and what's important to folks. Like Anna said, we've published this on our website. So you can go to our website and you can play it on your own. So far, we have over 1,000 plays. And at the end, Anna will show you the results so to give you a sense of where we are right now, who's kind of leading, which program is leading the charge here. Keep in mind, when you're thinking about which program to choose, this is not what's the most important program, right? It is if you had more money to invest, in which of these programs would you invest? Because you may say, hey, schools is the most important program, but we think they have enough money already, right? So keep in mind that it's not what's most important, it's where would you invest additional funds if the city had the funds. Yes, so if you were to, let's see. Oh, yeah. Now I can walk around like a real game show host. If you were to run this at home, what you would see is every time you ran the game, all of the matchups would randomize, right? And that's good because there's some top-seeded programs, let's say. So schools, police, public transportation, parks and trails. These are programs that would get a lot of support. So we want to make sure that that every time we run this challenge, we randomize the matchups so that you don't have the same programs matched up against each other every time. So Anna, we're ready to go?
Everybody should see a screen. Does everybody feel good? We should see waiting for City and Lynchburg. Yes. Okay, cool. That's happening. All right. You should see a funding matchup. Okay.
All right. Here we go. We've got our first matchup ready to go. That first matchup is choose funding option 1 if you would like to invest more money in youth services, programs, and centers. Choose funding option 2 if you would like to invest more money in recreation programming. So these are both in the same area of services. So funding option 1 for youth services, programs, and centers. Funding option 2, recreation programs. Looks pretty close at this point. Probably just a 2-vote lead for youth services, programs, and centers. Now it's 50-50. Has everyone cast their vote? Oh, there we go. It looks like we have a winner. Youth services, programs, and centers is going to move to the next round. All right, Anna will get us set up for our next matchup. Here we go. Choose funding option 1 if you would invest more money in public transportation. Choose funding option 2 if you would invest more funds in parks and trails. Parks and trails or public transportation? Now, Parks and Trails has been one of the most important programs to the folks who have taken this, have played this game online, and it looks like that'll hold here. 70% of you choose Parks and Trails. All right, that'll move on to the Elite 8. There's not 64 programs. That would take a long time. All right, our next first round matchup, we have funding option 1 is library services, and funding option 2 is mental health or human services. So if the city had more funds to invest, would you invest in funding option 1, library services, or funding option 2, mental health and human services? It looks like we have a pretty big victory here for mental health and human services. So that'll move forward into the Elite 8. All right, our next matchup, funding option 1, tourism, sports, arts, and culture, or funding option 2, mowing and landscape maintenance. Would you invest more money in funding option 1, tourism, sports, arts, and culture, or funding option 2, mowing and landscape maintenance? All right, by a 3-to-1 margin, it looks like tourism, sports, arts, and culture moves forward. I would think that aligns pretty much with a Rotarian's view of important investments in the city. All right, our next matchup, funding option 1 is going to be business attraction and retention, or funding option 2, brush and bulk services. I will tell you, brush and bulk services includes sucking up leaves from in front of your house, which is maybe the most amazing city service I have ever seen offered anywhere. All right. It looks like business attraction and retention is going to move forward again. I would have seated that high in a Rotarian's bracket. Next up, funding option 1 is going to be fire EMT rescue services, and funding option 2 is going to be zoning and code enforcement. So fire and EMT rescue services, or zoning and code enforcement. Unless you live on 5th Street, right across the MLK Bridge, you're probably going to go with fire and EMT services. All right, and that will move forward. Our next matchup, one of our top seeds here, funding option 1, police patrol services, and funding option 2, this is almost unfair. First round, funding option 1 is police patrol services, and funding option 2 is excellent schools. So would you invest more money in police patrol services, that's funding option 1, or funding option 2, excellent schools? These are probably our top 2 seeds. And it looks like schools is going to move forward. This is what happens with randomization. All right, our next matchup. This is our last first-round matchup, and then we'll move into the Elite Eight. Funding option 1, street repaving and maintenance. And funding option 2, Wi-Fi in public spaces. So street repaving and maintenance would include things like lane striping, potholes, repaving streets, or Wi-Fi in public spaces. Again, it looks like street repaving and maintenance is going to move forward. All right. So our first round is complete. We'll move on to the Elite Eight. Our first matchup in the Elite Eight is funding option 1, youth services, programs, and centers, or funding option 2, parks and trails. So youth programs, services, and centers, or parks and trails. It is like Sophie's Choice. That's part of the point of this, right? It gets really hard. All right, it looks like youth programs, services, and centers is going to move forward by about 2-1 over parks and trails, one of, as a relatively new Lynchburger, one of the best amenities I think we have in this city. All right, our next matchup, funding option 1, mental health and human services, or funding option 2, tourism, sports, arts, and culture. So funding option 1, mental health, human services, or tourism, sports, arts, and culture. And it looks like, while it's narrowing by about a 2-1 margin, it's going to be mental health and human services that moves forward. Our next matchup is, don't want to get ahead of Anna here, funding option 1, business attraction and retention, and funding option 2, fire and EMT rescue services. So funding option 1 for business attraction and retention, funding option 2 for fire EMT services. I would call this an upset. It also make firefighters very happy. It looks like fire and EMT rescue services will move forward. All right, our last Elite Eight matchup before we're into the Final Four. We have funding option 1, excellent schools, and funding option 2, street repaving and maintenance. So, kids or roads? All right. It looks like you guys have chosen kids. All right. So excellent schools moves into the Final Four. All right, here we go. It gets harder and harder. Our first Final Four matchup, we have funding option 1, youth services, programs, and centers, and funding option 2, mental health and human services. So youth services, programs, and centers, or mental health or human services. Uh-oh, it looks tight. But mental health and human services pulled away at the end. All right. Your first finalist is mental health and human services, and they will be matched up against our winner of this next contest. Funding option 1, fire EMT rescue services, or funding option 2, excellent schools. Well, here we go. All right. By about a 5-1 margin, excellent schools will move forward. All right, again, schools has proven to be probably the #1 seed when we've done this. All right, our final matchup. Who is going to be the victorious program in the afternoon Rotary Bracket Challenge? We have funding option 1, mental health and human services, and funding option 2, excellent schools. And it looks like Excellent Schools is going to win. All right. Congratulations. You have made it through the bracket. Anna's going to hit, let's make sure we get the total bracket recorded here. You've got it, Shaq? All right, so here's where we are right now. We've had a little over 1,000 plays, I believe. So this is your Elite Eight, your Final Four, your Final Two, your champion. And of every time this has been played, these are your victors. So excellent schools, mental health and human services, public transportation, library services, police patrol services. Those are your top 5. But excellent schools is kind of way out in front. And then if you look down here, so you see the total number of wins. So you guys were about chalk, right? So excellent schools and mental health and human services were your final 2, and those are the 2 that win the most. And then we have a sort of complicated aggregate points rating that we kind of nerded out on a little bit, but it's more of a weighted average of how the programs are performing. And again, excellent schools and mental health and human services are very much in the lead now. So thank you very much for playing. Again, this is not scientific, but I hope it was fun and you take away. There's a lot of services the city provides, right? And all of them take resources, and all of them are important. But we really appreciate you taking the time to having us out today and playing the game with us. So we're going to turn it over to Rachel Fresheisen, our city planner, in just a moment. But before we do that, any budget questions?
Where are we, like today? Where does it stand? How big is the gap?
How big is the gap?
We started with about $11 million gap, and so the document's due to the printer in a couple of weeks, so we've kind of balanced it at this point with the city manager, but we did start with about $11 million gap.
When you say 11 million, what is this assuming the rates of charge and so forth and real estate remain the same? Is that
Yes,
what?
yes.
So you're just assuming if there were no changes?
Correct.
You would have 11 million?
Correct.
Okay.
Based on our
You have to
revenue
make some
projection.
assumptions about that before.
Yeah, with the 89-cent tax rate for real estate and no change in personal property.
And that covers the cost of inflation in services as well. So it's basically, we talk about gap. That's the amount of dollars needed to maintain the status quo level of services.
I'd like to ask another question. How does the city's budget process vary? We're one of the unusual states that has corporate cities, okay, which are standalone, okay, not part of the counties. How does the budget process vary for the counties versus the city operations?
Do you want to come
Counties
to
have, at first, a lot fewer direct services they provide than what the city provides. So we are, okay, I'll use the microphone. Counties provide fewer services than the cities do. Typically there's no police force, there's no refuse collection, so on and so forth. Their utilities are set up differently. They also get a lot more funding from the state. So for instance, in Lynchburg, we do almost all of our own road maintenance here. The county's road maintenance is almost completely done by VDOT. The public safety services are significantly more responsive from a time standpoint. You've got, so fire and EMT services, I think our overall fire EMT budget is 25-30 million now, Donna, something like that annually? 20? A lot of the counties you're going to have volunteer fire and rescue services, so on and so forth. So it's a lot, the services that we provide are a lot more comprehensive. We also get less help from the state. Though the process itself is probably very similar, right? It's services and resources and trying to figure out how to balance them. They're on the same time frame that we are on. So from that standpoint, it's similar. From a process standpoint, it's pretty similar.
I've heard it said that the human services burden that cities shoulder, if you will, including Lynchburg for sure, is one of the major drains, at least comparatively speaking, to the counties and so forth, that the counties live off of the city's human services and so forth. What's your reaction to that observation?
I will tell you that per capita, cities spend substantially more than, so Lynchburg and cities in general spend significantly more per capita on health and human services. I will tell you that the numbers can be a little misleading in that our social services budget is every dollar we spend, we get about 84.5 cents from the state and feds to help support those programs. So although we're spending more, a big portion of that expense is being is being underwritten by the feds and the state. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the nature of cities, right? Cities in general are going to have higher tax rates and offer more robust services. And that's just kind of the nature of how we've developed. And you're right, independent cities is a very uniquely Virginia, and I think there's a few in Texas, thing. And it's a really interesting concept. There aren't very many places like Lynchburg that offer all of the services that are typically associated with a city and a county. And for us, government nerds, it's a lot of fun to work in a city that really is a full service city. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Even though there was a huge support for the school funding, but can city council say, oh shucks, we don't want to spend that money on schools, we're going to spend it on trees?
Yeah. Ultimately, city council's requirement from a school funding standpoint is that they meet what the state calls the required local effort, right? And that is, as Donna said, there is a complex funding formula that the state uses, and every locality is assigned a required local effort. It's an amount that we have to fund schools. So our city council has to fund schools at that level. Anything above that is ultimately optional. Right now, we fund about double what our required local effort is, and any of that funding or additional funding is optional to city council.
2X sounds wonderful, okay, in terms of, what's really required minimally, okay, versus what we're doing. But more important question seems to me, how are we doing against our competitors, okay? How are we doing against the Charlottesvilles, the Roanoke's, I don't know, you get the idea here. How do we compare in terms, if we've got to attract good talent, industry, all those kind of things that we want to attract to build the economy and so forth. How do we compare to them?
I don't have that information.
Is that a good question to ask?
It's a tremendous question to ask. And the good thing is all of that information is readily available there's a local government spending data set that the state publishes, so you can see all of those comparative per capita spendings across all of whatever we would consider our competitive cities to be. All I would say was this about schools is there's probably nothing more important from an economic development perspective than having good schools, right? So we look at Framatome. Framatome just announced that they're going to bring 500 new, good-paying jobs to the city of Lynchburg over the next couple of years. Well, the way our tax infrastructure is designed, we don't collect income tax, right? If you earn money in Lynchburg, we don't collect any income tax. So if you drive into Framatome and you work every day, and then you drive home to Forest or out in Timberlake and you live, then what we're collecting is basically whatever meals tax you spent on your lunch that day, right? So if these employees from the folks that fill these jobs that Framatome is producing move to the Lynchburg area, work at Framatome, and live out in Forest, well, we've missed the boat, right? And the way you get people to live in your city is you have good services and good schools, right? So there's a huge economic development component to school funding we always have to be thinking about. All right. Well, thank you, guys. I'm going to turn it over to Rachel Fisheisen, who's going to walk you through our comprehensive planning process.
It's because you stole my word earlier. You used the word comprehensive to describe our services. So. Thank you, Greg. My name is Rachel Fisheisen. I'm the city planner. I'm tagging along on these budget engagement sessions to talk to you about our comprehensive plan, which may sound unrelated, but it's really not. The city is currently in the process of updating our comprehensive plan. And I'm here to just talk about the importance of that and the importance of your involvement and how this effort can impact future budgets. So starting with the basics, what is a comprehensive plan? It's really our community's roadmap for the future. It's an official adopted public policy document that provides long-range direction for the city of Lynchburg. What does it do? To answer that, I like to think about the process, because this plan is really as much about the engagement and the process as it is the final document. So first, we start with our baseline sort of existing conditions. We have to ask ourselves the big kind of existential questions like, who are we? Where are we going? What do we want to be in the future? What is our vision, and what direction should the city take in the future? And then understanding that, we say, what is that vision, and how do we get there? What are the specific steps that we can take to get us on track to achieve that path forward? And in many ways, that question is really the most important part of the plan, because the plan only works if we are able, as staff and as a planning commission, to use and apply it. The comprehensive plan itself covers a lot. It's meant to be comprehensive, as the name would imply. The backbone of most comprehensive plans are the transportation and future land use elements, but these are not one-size-fits-all plans. Every locality in the state has them, but the plan really is designed to reflect what the community tells us. So while some things are mandated by the state, like Donna mentioned, Virginia code tells us we have to do a lot of things. We can also include things like parks and rec, economic development, that sort of thing. And so that's really where you come in as citizens. We want to hear from you and what your priorities are, even if you are not a citizen of Lynchburg. If you're a surroundings citizen, that's fine too, because if you spend time in Lynchburg, it matters. So how can you be involved? Don't panic. You don't need to do this QR code right now. I know you're probably QR coded out. I do have it on a card that I will send home with you. I didn't want to put it on the tables and cause confusion with 2 QR codes. But we do have a project website up for this planning effort. It's called lynchburgtogether.com. And there you can sign up to be added to our email list. This is a long process, so you'll want to stay in the loop as the plan is progressing. Our goal is to have our final draft available in winter of 2025. So that's a long ways away, but it's going to be, a process up until then. On the website, there are a couple of ways to get involved. There's an interactive mapping tool where you can drop a pin and say, I think this is an asset, or I think there's an issue here, or a missed opportunity, something that we should know about. We also have a survey, which is really the most important piece that I want to emphasize today. Is that importance of that input, because the priorities and goals that we establish in this plan are used for future budgets. So the input we're gathering now won't necessarily change anything for this year's budget cycle, but we really do use the plan for expense planning in the future. So every page in our capital improvements plan, has a section where we actually tie that item back to a goal in the comprehensive plan, because if we are spending that kind of, making that kind of investment, it should be to meet a goal that we establish in our plan. So it's really is important we use it and consult the plan as we need. So I hope you'll participate in the survey and stay involved as the planning process goes on, and visit lynchburgtogether.com. And like I said, I will pass these out to your tables at this time. I think that wraps us up. Anna, do you have anything to add? Just want to say thank you again on behalf of all the staff, and special shout out to those members who could not make it and had extra plates for us to enjoy. We were not expecting lunch, so thank you all so much, and hope you have a great day. Does anyone have any questions about the plan process?
I remember the plan being kind of every 5-year event, it seems like years ago, but it sounds like now it's more an ongoing thing, where maybe there was an annual minor update, but is this a change, this full annual process that you're talking about now, compared to historically?
So the Code of Virginia requires that we at least look at the plan every 5 years and do a review and update as necessary. So at this time, our comprehensive plan is about 10 years old, so our Planning Commission has initiated the update, and so that is what we're working on now, recognizing that really the only constant is change, right? Communities change over time, priorities change, and so we want to be sure that we have a plan that captures that as we are a dynamic, growing city.
Does this include one of the outputs, is the land use program and so forth, in terms of the way you think zoning would be
Yes.
changing over time and stuff like that?
Yes, the future land use map is a critical piece of the comprehensive plan. And for those who are not familiar, future land use map, it's similar to zoning, but it is not binding like zoning is. So zoning is what you can currently do on your property. Future land use map is, blue sky, barring all other conditions, what would this land be used for? So that is the future land use category versus the zoning. And we will be looking at that. Thank you so much.
All right, I have two of our coveted Rotary Club of Lynchburg coffee mugs up here for our speakers. Come on, I know y'all want them. We had 3 speakers, but I've got 2 mugs. Yes, there we go, there we go. Thank you very much, thank you again. We appreciate y'all being here and educating us, and I enjoyed the game. I think everyone enjoyed the game. Okay. So our next meeting will be in 2 weeks, February 27th, and apparently this month's theme is Lynchburg, because we will be hearing from Ashley Kirshner, who is Executive Director of the Downtown Lynchburg Association. So mark your calendars for February 27th. Come on back. And now will you please stand and join me for the 4-way test? Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.